welcome everyone. I'm so glad that you're able to join us. Thank you, Dr. Miles Payne, for putting this all together and the entire symposium crew. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our annual symposium. I'm Dr. China Jude, your Moaa president. Before we get started, I just wanted to touch upon one thing. You know, there's a lot happening in the world, and we want to make sure that everyone knows that Moaa is here for you. So if you want to have the opportunity to reach out and talk to us and share concerns and ideas and how we can best move forward in this climate, please let us know. If you haven't already known, Moaa has put a statement out. In that statement, it provides a lot of strategies that you can take into consideration in your respective departments or pass it on to your leadership to make sure that we're all respecting each other and uniting. And so I'm going to get off that topic because we have a great opening feature speaker, and I want to make sure that we have enough time with him. We're happy that you decided to spend some time with Moaa today. And we have a great lineup for you today for this virtual symposium. This is our first time doing it. And I have to admit, our entire symposium committee is doing a great job of getting this kicked off. So make sure that you provide us with as much information so we can get better and better each time. I hope that you will be able to join us for the entire day, but if not, feel free to pop in and out because we have some great speakers. So let's get down to business. Our first guest got us started in athletics administration at his alma mater, University of Florida, and then moved on to serve as the CEO of the Orange Bowl Committee and became the athletic director at University of Central Florida. Now he's an executive at Brentwood Partners. Let's go ahead and say hello to Keith Tribble. Hi, Keith, how are you?
I'm doing fine. I like that.
You like that?
That's
we got jazz music.
Huh?
Jazz music, we got applause. So
Yeah.
I want to make sure that everybody that's on this symposium, I want you to applaud Keith. So let me see some hand clapping around the nation. I got Kiki doing, yes, there you go. Thank you very much. So Keith, listen, you know, you've been in the industry, now you're out of the industry. I'm a little curious to hear, what do you think that is some of the things that stick out of your mind that has drastically changed since you've been in the field?
Well, first of all, some of the things that still exist, and we may touch on some of those later on,
Yeah.
but I think the biggest thing that is coming to the forefront that I think all administrators have to deal with is the NIL situation. And, you know, it's a situation that has, you know, it's not new. And I think some folks who are just coming into the whole mix think this is something that just evolved within the last 3 or 4 years. But I can recall in 2007, I think, when I was at UCF, I sat on a 60-person board from the NCAA that was really looking into this issue. And, you know, at that time, I mean, no one really wanted to address it because no one thought it would ever be come to the point where it is today. So I think that's one of the biggest issues that I see on the horizon that has to be solved in a manner which is consistent with amateur athletics and universities and the student athletes themselves. I am a strong believer and a strong advocate for the athletes being able to have something. And that's where the issue to me is. What is that something and how do you do it? And I really think that at some point between this point and 2007, there should have been a real sense of urgency to try to resolve it, because it was an issue that I felt was not going to go away. And obviously that's the case.
Do you think that we're operating in this reactive state when it comes to NIL and any of these other issues? I mean, you mentioned before that, you know, this is something that has been going on for a long time. What do you think that turned the corner to make it a top priority right now for the NCAA?
Well, it's unfortunate. The NCAA is like most major corporations, organizations, they don't really do anything until they really have to. and until something forces them to do something. I wish that wasn't the case, but if you go over history and look at things when big changes have been made, it's because something forced it. It wasn't something that they woke up and they said, we need to do this, or we need to make this change. And I think when there was pressure put on the states and their legislatures to say, hey, why aren't these athletes getting some sort of some money from their likeness and so forth? And then it became a snowball. It's almost like the great football states decided that, yes, let's take care of our kids. Let's take care of our kids. Now, we don't know whether that was because they really wanted to take care of the kids or they really wanted to show that they were out front on the issue. So I think that, unfortunately, in this society, most big changes come from, a lot of pressure. It's not coming from somebody just decides to do it.
Well, the interesting part is that this pressure is really within ourselves. So I remember in our earlier conversation, you mentioned about the young man that was on television who talked about, he was hungry.
Yeah, I can't remember his name. I think it was a UConn basketball player, and he made a comment that basically after he plays or after they play, they don't have anything to eat, and they're limited by rules and so forth. And so I think when that became an issue, then we started getting a lot of fuel stations, and I have one fuel station, two fuel stations, 7 fuel stations, and you can eat as much as you want. And if you really look at it, most of us who played athletics, we know that you burn a lot of calories, and so you need to refuel yourself. So that's common sense that you probably need to try to do that as much as possible. But you're right, John. I think a lot of times we could have been ahead of the game with the NCAA or the membership to really push forward some things that were going to be, very accommodating to the kids. We knew as administrators that a generation had changed from where most of us had gone to school in the 70s or 80s. It changed. It was more of what's in it for me? How is this going to help me? I can recall when I played, and I'm one of those old guards. It was for the love of the game. It was for, I'll do anything for the coach. But now it's different. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying you have to either govern or lead based on the conditions you have. And that's what we have now. So we've got to be able to change to make sure that we're getting the best out of our student athletes.
So with that UConn player, thank you, Shabazz, for pointing that out. So does it focus more on the student athlete voice? Should we be advocating for bigger voices for our student athletes, which of course would lead through the vetting process to get to whatever legislative change that needs to be made?
Well, I'm old school, and I can tell you right now, none of the us administrators would have a job if it wasn't for student athletes.
Of course.
So at the end of the day, that's your product. That's who you're dealing with. So yes, there should be it should be a student athletes at the table. It's part of the process. The process is learning how to sit at the table, give your thoughts, give you what you believe in, and understanding that you don't get everything you want, but at least you had a chance to talk about it and put it on the table, and they listen to you. That's the one thing that, if anything I get out of even what's happening today, it's being able to somebody to hear you, to listen to what you have to say. That's the first part of trying to get some sign of understanding. So yes, I think student athletes should be at the table, and they should participate in the process and understand the process doesn't always give you what you want, but it allows you to at least to be able to tell your story.
Yeah, I was sitting there thinking about how we could do a better job of empowering those who are participating in SAC, as well as our student athlete leadership teams, because that gives them the opportunity to get engaged at that particular time. But during a transition of that student athlete voice, there is a lot of pressure that we are putting on these student athletes to serve as leaders in our respective institutions, and in many cases on the national level. And mental health is one of those things that a lot of institutions are putting the necessary resources to support those particular student athletes. Do you think from your vantage point at this particular time that we're leading in the right direction when we're addressing those mental health issues?
Oh, I think that is the buzzword, or the thing that is very important today. You know, we went through a lot of different phases. You know, if you look at perfection, and especially on the field of athletics, I think we went from you just needed a pure athlete to play. Then it went from the pure athlete that had the ability to be stronger, faster. Then it went from the athlete to have nutrition. Then it went to the athlete to have better, I mean, so we went through all those things. And now I think the last piece of it is, how do we deal with that student athlete's mental? Where is he and she mentally, either in their day-to-day life or even when they participate? And I'm working with a company that's really going to start working with that aspect, in the recruiting aspect of really determining that kid's mental capacity, that mental ability, how he or she is thinking. Are they a good fit for your program? I think that's a lot that has to do with it. Are kids a good fit for your program? Because every kid is not good for every school. And so I think the process of how we, just like when we hire people, we try to find the right fit. We need to find the right fit for our universities, for our student athletes.
Yeah, that's the tough part about it, is because, you know, the recruiting game is extremely competitive. You know, the students are transferring all over the nation now.
Yeah.
And so how do we best evaluate not only the physical talent of these student athletes, but to make sure that whatever considered to be that fit, that buzzword fit that a lot of people are annoyed with. You have any suggestions that administrators can move on to their coaching staff and making sure that they're the appropriate fit for the institution?
Well, you know, I think it's going to differ for each institution, of course. And I think there are some basics that go into anything. And I've always believed that athletic departments tend to try to run like what they quote nonprofits. You know, I get people who say, well, we're nonprofits, so we don't have to, you know, be a business. You are a business. You're just not making a profit. It's a non-profit. Doesn't mean you're making an overage. You have overage. That's what they technically call it. So you have to run it like a business. So at the end of the day, to get the best out of your employee, or in this case, student athlete, you have to do those things that really encourage them to do things. And I'm a big believer in listening. Let people say what they have to say. Make sure there's accountability, because everybody wants to be accountable. I mean, if anybody tells you they don't want to be accountable, they're lying to you. They just may not want to be accountable to whatever you're asking or whatever they're doing, but at some point they have accountability within their DNA. So I really think it really gets down to, you know, I'm a big believer in surrounding your people who understand your philosophy, understand what you're trying to get accomplished, and know that you care about them. And if you put all those together, most cases you're gonna get the right kids, because a lot of kids are you know, I see kids today are more sensitive. They have they're more relationship driven than we were back when I played. So if you're not giving that quote love, if you're not really showing that you care about them, they're ready to go to the next who's going to try to do it. And they may not get it there either, but at least they know that they don't think they're getting it there, so they're going to move somewhere else. And that's just something we have to recognize. And it's a different generation, different age.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. You know, I was working on my dissertation and focused on in my literature review about transactional versus transformational relationships when it comes to student athletes, which impacts giving. So shout out to Dr. Kiki Baker-Barnes for being my accountability partner on that. And so, of course, if we're going to encourage our student athletes to have the appropriate voice and finding the right fit and making sure that they align with the right culture, we have to make sure as administrative and coaching staff that we have the voice too.
Yes.
So, you know, in light of everything that is happening in this country when it comes to impacting our Black and Brown brothers and sisters around the nation, you know, we're still trying to find our voice in athletic departments. How do we have those candid but yet non-threatening conversations with leadership who do not look like us. I mean, you are an athletic director. What kind of environment that you created for individuals who did not look like you to be able to speak their truth?
Well, that's an interesting question, and it's one which, and I often tell this, and I hope I answer your question in the right way, and because I think this is important. I often tell my non-black and my non-colored, if you want to call it, white friends or whatever, that we approach, meaning if you're a person of color or a minority, you have to approach the situations totally different. We have been trained and taught to fit in. Okay, our whole life. Whatever we do, we have been taught and trained that you have to fit in. So when you put the shoe on the other foot, it's not really their place to try to fit into who you are, to fit in what you have to do. So what I generally try to do is to try to make sure that folks know that whether you're white, black, green, blue, whatever, it really makes no difference to me. Mine was about you as a person. Are you able to do the job? Do you have integrity? I mean, all the things that you want in anything. And you have to display that. You have to show that no matter if it's this person or that person, you're not different from how you really treat them. And I think sometimes you get those who are not minorities. They look at you a little funny because they're trying to think about why are you really doing that way? Why are you not angry, or why are you not? And to me, it wasn't about being angry. It wasn't about trying to say, okay, I'm the boss and I'm black and I'm so free. I mean, that wasn't my issue. My issue was trying to make sure that everyone knew that we were one. We were going to, do it together. And I was going to treat everybody the same. Now, I can't tell you the kind of feeling that came back from those who didn't really feel it. But really, I really didn't care because, I believe that if I had a principle and something that I wanted to do, I felt that it was well within the rights of who I am, then that's what I was going to do.
Have you ever had the opportunity to step into that lens of a black male and to speak on anything in your departments, organizations in regards to young black men? Because, we're talking about a significant number of football players and men's basketball players are men of color. So I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on that. Along with that, of course, I'm sure that many of us who are on this virtual symposium have been in a situation where they're hearing their colleagues say, I don't see color. And how do you respond to those type of deal when we know that when we come to a stoplight, there is red, yellow, and green. So we do see color. So how do you respond to those people that are saying things like that? And, the initial question is, have you ever in your leadership role spoke on being a black male or spoke about our student athletes being black men and women?
Yes, I have. And I think sometimes it's probably gotten me in trouble. And what I mean by trouble, it's one of those things where, I found out some parts of my career when you did things that were right and correct because that's who you were and you're guided by a higher power that tells you right from wrong. You were, you were looked upon and you were sometimes backstabbed and all that kind of stuff. But I made a decision that I'd rather be right with myself and understanding that what I believed in was important because it's the way that I was raised and it was the way that I believed, my whole life. So yes, did I know it when I took some stance sometime or made decisions that I knew was going to go against someone who was probably upset? Yes. But I was willing to take that chance. I can recall, China, I spoke to a group, and I think the group was probably half men, half women, probably 98.7% white. And you know, we were talking about diversity in fundraising. And I love the way, you know, people say diversity, you know, it's like all catch all, diversity just carries everything. But I was more concerned about them understanding my story. And I told them to just picture this. And when I started in this business, I was fortunate enough to be an assistant athletic director at the University of Florida. And I went to my first NCAA meeting in Dallas, Texas. I can't tell you the year, I don't want to age myself. But I can recall that I was the only Black administrator in that room. And you know, those of us who've been to the NCAA know there's thousands of delegates. You know, because I had always done that in my life, I thought nothing of it. So when I told the story, I said, close your eyes and picture yourself as a white man or woman in NCAA, and it's all Black folks. I just watched the facial expression. And that told me the story, because at the end of the day, it's about how you really are able to walk in another man's shoes and understand what they're going through. And so I think there's a great opportunity today for those of us who are willing to do it. And I say, you know, I'm at the point in my career where I probably should have done some things early on that I didn't do because I was worried about that next promotion. Would I get in trouble? Would they not like it, and so forth? But at some point, you've got to be man or woman enough to ask the question, what do you mean you don't see color? And that's all you have to say, and let something come back. And then we will have a dialogue. We need to start the dialogue, or we need to demand that it's not a cut it off. I have a Black friend, or I like having women in my, I hired a woman last month. No, we can't allow that to continue without saying, I hear what you're saying, but tell me, how do you believe that's a way of understanding? I mean, I really want to understand. So I just think it's an opportunity, a new time. I always believe God always opens up doors, and He sits there and say, now I've opened this door for you. You got one or two things you can do. You can either move forward or you can just stay still. But I'm not telling you what to do. I give you our free will. I give you the opportunity. You have to be able to do it.
Well, I tell you what, I would love to hear everyone on this virtual symposium send in those type of statements. My best friend is Black. I don't see color. Let's just flood the chat rooms right now. Throw those type of one sentence statements that many people have said to us where you just cringe, and because I think that the more that we share, we can talk about what are some of the best ways to respond to those statements, to make sure that we are educating people around the country on the best way to navigate through this most difficult time. Let's go ahead and do another switch. I know we have so much to cover, and I want to make sure that everybody knows that if you have any questions, toward the end, we'll be fielding questions. Dr. Miles Payne will be helping us fill those questions for you, Keith. So we definitely want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to get engaged. So let's talk about my favorite sport. One of the many reasons why I came to University of Wyoming. I want some good football in my life. And I know you are a football guy. You have received a number of Sports Illustrated awards, and some of the, I think a couple of them as being one of the most influential people in sports and your football accolades. So where do you see us going with football? Here we are. The NCAA has approved for the return of volunteer activities for June 1. Our student athletes here at Wyoming returned yesterday, and they're ready to go for some voluntary workouts. So tell me your thought. Do you think we're going to actually have some football in our life? And what does the new normal look like in football?
Well, I'll take the second one. New normal. I think that still has to be defined, what the new normal is. But there will be a new normal. I believe, yes, I believe we'll play football. We have to play football. There's too much. The finances and the money from football is too great to not play unless there's some real, epidemic that says you can't do it. And I think where we are now is in the testing and making sure that the student athletes are safe and going through those kind of things will do the best they can to ensure that. Now, the big question is whether there be fans in the stand. That's a question that, I'm sure they'll come up with some sort of number, some sort of percentage, some sort of distancing. That'll be a good thing. And I don't, the one thing I can tell you that I don't believe that there will be a point where we'll have 100-some thousand fans at Alabama or, whatever the big, I don't think that will happen this year. But yes, I believe we'll play football. And those of us who enjoy ESPN with 5 televisions that are watching games across the country, we have to make sure that happens, at least so we can see something on those 5 TVs we have.
Definitely. Well, I tell you what, when it comes to the fans, they're going to have to make some adjustments themselves when they're coming to games. So that's the social distancing and the wearing the mask. What are your thoughts in putting those expectations or those mandates on those fans to show up at football games? There are some institutions who are mandating the wearing of masks. We have others who are still trying to figure it out. So do you think that takes away from the game environment?
Well, we don't know because I don't think we've ever experienced it, at least in this time. I think I saw a picture going around on Facebook or whatever back in the 1917 epidemic they had the Georgia Tech game, and they were wearing masks at the Georgia Tech game. So it has been done, obviously. I think those who really want to protect themselves or in a vulnerable type of group, I think they're going to continue to do masks and continue the social distancing. I don't think that part is going to leave us for a while, especially the social distancing and being able to be aware of your surroundings and who's next to you and all that kind of stuff. We just have to adapt. And I think we are very good at adapting, especially in college athletics.
Definitely, and especially in the African-American community, we definitely adapt well. Yeah, I think that the challenges are student athletes and trying to convince them to practice social distancing as well as wearing masks when it comes to this pandemic. I am excited for them to return. And I'm hopeful that things will turn out well, but I am a little nervous on top of it. Since we're already talking about COVID-19, let's talk a little bit about your thoughts and the impact that it has on the African-American community. In the state of Michigan, 40% of those who have died and a third confirmed cases are African-Americans, while they make up only 14% of the state population. And in New York City, 34% of the people who died from the Hispanic community, although Hispanic people only make up 29% of the city's population. And I can go on with these stats on and on. Tell me in terms of your concerns in regards to how COVID-19 affects the African-American community, and what are you doing personally, and what are some of the things that you would like to share with the audience members in regards to making sure we protect ourselves?
Well, I think one of the things that we have to do is we have to assume that very few people are going to care and take care of us except ourselves. We have to do the things that either the CDC or your local tells you what to do, and probably do it twice, whatever it is. Because we have seen, as you said, that this COVID-19 has really affected those who should be the least to be affected because of the symptoms that we have in our country. Poor health care, low-income jobs. I mean, the ability for people to have jobs, less education. I mean, all those things that really fester that type of opportunity that type of thing to happen. And it is, I think, without being political, I think we got lulled into believing that it couldn't happen to us, or that we were protected, or I mean, all these things that you hear. One thing that we probably have realized, that this is a silent, and it moves everywhere that you could possibly think of. I mean, who would think that you would go to church and there are 200 people in a church, one person has it, and now the other people have to quarantine for that one person because of the transmission, and you don't know how it would happen. So I think as those who are affected in the Black and Brown community, I think we have to do, again, everything that we can to protect ourselves. You know, I see a lot of, even in some of the protests I've seen on television, you know, I'm all for protests, obviously not, you know, peaceful protests, but you can protest with a mask. You know, the distancing, you know, it's sort of, I mean, you need both to ensure at least, you know, if you go in percentages, a better percentage if you do both. But at least the mask keeps you from spreading and keeps the other person from spreading, and it sort of mitigates, I guess, the distance that you have in your deal. So I would advise, I mean, don't until there's a vaccine, I think we should be at least very cognizant of what that is out there. It's not going anywhere. It's not just going to poof, be gone in a day or two. So we have to do everything that we can to make sure that we protect ourselves.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Being in Wyoming, our cases are low in comparison to other states. And, you know, my mindset is that the virus hasn't changed for the most part. Our attitudes toward the virus has changed.
Yeah.
And you can tell when you're seeing people at the various stores and out and about at the protest not wearing any masks.
Yeah.
So that really does make a significant difference. You know, you worked at Jackson Health, so that
Yes.
was a hospital, correct?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
And you were a fundraiser there,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
And so with that fundraising responsibility, was it a situation where you focused a lot on particular illnesses or wings in the hospital, or was it just fundraising for the entire hospital? And then how do we communicate with our Moaa members the skill set of fundraising? And I know you and I haven't really talked about that on our pre-meeting call, but I think that we do have a lot of people on this symposium that would like to know what makes a successful fundraiser. Is it the amount of money raised? Is the fact that you know how to ask? Is it the cultivation? So there's a lot of questions in there. I'm curious to hear.
Okay. Well, first of all, the Jackson Hospital is the second largest public, the largest public hospital in the country, over, I think, of close to 2,000 beds. We worked in conjunction with the University of Miami, and the way it worked, University of Miami really focused on fundraising for research and education and things of that nature, as most universities would. And the foundation for the hospital was really more in programmatics and facilities and buildings and things of that nature. So, and during the course while I was there, we raised over $60 million in a period of 5 years. And most of that was for the facilities and so forth. You know, I think you ask about the qualities of a fundraiser. You know, there is no secret sauce. There is no, you know, you need to, you know, do this, do that, except you have to know how to create great relationships. You know, fundraising is about relationships. And it's about, you know, you hear me talk a lot about how things that we do in life tie into other things. Here's one. You won't buy or be friends with someone you don't like. So why would you expect people to give money to you and they don't like you and they don't know you? So you've got to be able to create that relationship and have people like, because more people give to people they like than to the cause. I've been very successful by relationships, and you form that relationship and they say, well, Keith, what do you need? I need X, Y, and Z. Well, I really don't, but you know, hey, if you say this good, if you say I should do that, then I'll do it. So I think the relationship is number one. Relationship is number two. Then I think the ability to be able to close, know how to close. You know, I know that folks who are really heavy into the development side, I didn't grow up on the development side. I grew up on the sales side and involved to the development when I went to UCF. But they're the same. And there's some people who are really heavy development says, no, development and sales aren't the same. To me, it's the same technique that you have to use, except you know, and sales is more transactional, as we talked about earlier. So I think, you know, as we talked earlier, I believe that the next round of jobs that are coming in the AD sector are going to be individuals who have a strong fundraising background. And that's even more so with COVID-19, because having funds, you know, no more can the athletic director go to the Mr. or Mrs. President and say, you know, such and such, because we have 10 million in shortage, the president's going to look at you and say, well, it looks like you have to cut 10 million out your budget because I don't have it. So in order to do that, you've got to either fundraise for it, or you've got to, you know, raise the price of your tickets or create some sort of different way of revenue.
Yeah, that's the painful part about it, is that I'm reading around the country, not only sports are being cut, we have staff being furloughed and laid off. And it's a very painful process, because that is impacting people's lives, students,
Yeah.
and coaches and staff on that. So I really appreciate you mentioned about with this COVID-19 affecting a lot of the departments, they have to make those particular changes. Do you feel that you need to have fundraising experience to be an athletic director? I've noticed that we have a number of new athletic directors on the call where they came from academics or compliance, or so do you think that that's going to be the focus now?
Well, let me answer it this way, Chana. I don't think it's a necessary, but I think it will not hurt.
Okay.
Because at some point in your job, even if you are extremely great and your background is in compliance, or your background is in student services, or your background is in whatever it may be, and that particular institution is looking for someone who has that, hopefully you don't have those issues like that will continue. I mean, you might be a person that, because you have the background, you can come in and fix that job right now. But at some point, you're going to get into a fundraising mode. It's going to happen in any athletics director's tenure, just like a president. You know, there's some presidents who don't have fundraising background, but at some point in their career, you know, they're going to have to fundraise for a major fundraising that's coming on, or whatever that may be. So I think I would strongly suggest that you have some sort of fundraising. If you're an associate AD or deputy AD and you have a great relationship with your athletic director, I think it's not out of the picture to ask he or she to give you some fundraising opportunities. So at least you can say that, or have that sort of experience when you're talking at these AD job searches.
Wonderful. So I'm going to ask you one more question, and then we're going to start fielding some questions from the audience. You know, we are definitely appreciative of you joining us, you know, being a CEO, being an athletic director. You have had some wonderful highs, and I know that you have had some lows.
Yes.
Yeah. So what are some of those teachable moments that you have had, those lessons learned where it made you really evaluate that when you're put in your, whatever your next situation is, that you are prepared?
Well, you know, I can tell you that when you when you aspire to sit in the chair, whatever chair that is, if that's a CEO of a company or CEO of a foundation like I was, or be an athletic director. I was a bowl director. So most of my career, I would say 80% of my career was spent in the number one chair. And I think over the years, if I look back, China, I can say that I gained a lot of experience and I gained a lot of knowledge. And I think there are times when, because you have done that at such an early age, or, when I first started, that you tend to lose the real, I don't call it the focus of it, but you tend to lose some things that are important. Say, for instance, when I was, athletic director at UCF, unfortunately, we had an NCAA situation that led me to, resign because we had some violations. If looking back on it, I did not handle it right. And in fact, I have never said anything about it publicly until this moment. Not because I was hiding anything, it wasn't anything to hide, because there was no reason to do it. I was never one that would go, well, it's not my fault, it's somebody else's fault. Well, I was in charge. It was my fault. I allowed some things to happen that shouldn't have happened, or were interpreted that happened. I think, let me put it that way. But going forward, I learned from that you can't trust everyone. You have to make sure that the people around you are people who believe in you. I'm going to say this because I really believe this. There are times when we sit in a situation as a minority and you are the head honcho, the cheese, the number one, the numero uno, or all you want to call it. And it's reflective of the situation we're going through now, you're going to get a lot of darts thrown at you. You're going to get sometimes tables thrown at you. And you're going to get people who really don't believe you should be there and going to really try to take you out of the game. But when you are successful, that even makes it even worse, because you're not supposed to be successful. But I think the thing that I would pass on to those who are minorities, and don't let that be the in the back of your head that you always got to be worried about that. I just think you have to be proactive and understanding that it's there. It's just like, I know as an African American, I have 70% chance, maybe 80% chance of being stopped by a policeman. I know that. So for me to worry about that every day is not going to be productive. So I have to do things that are going to make that less likely to happen. I guess that's what I say it. So I say that to say, do those things when you sit in those chairs are less likely to get you in a point where people are always second guessing you, always thinking that, you're not good enough. I apologize if it's something that's real, but that's who I am, real, and that's how I feel about it. And I think it's made me a better person today because I've gone through it. You never know a lot of things about yourself until you go through something. And as you said, and I was very fortunate and blessed that God has given me opportunities. But just like I think God gives you opportunities, God sets things up to say, this is something that I tried to tell you may not be what I want you to do, but because I believe in you, I allowed you to do it. And so I believe in that. And I've always believed that there are things when because, I can tell you the story. When I was a CEO of the Orange Bowl Committee, 13 years. In the history of the bowl system, there are 42 bowls right now. In the history of the bowl system, there have only been three African Americans. Troy Matthew was executive director of the Sugar Bowl back when I was at the Orange Bowl, and John Grant right now is an executive director of the Celebration Bowl. So out of 40 some bowls, there's not one African American that I know of, unless somebody, I tend to know most of them. So I had as they say, good job. And I had this burning desire to be an athletics director. And God said, okay, you got this burning desire, then I'm gonna let you do it. But then I'm gonna also tell you that it's time for you to leave.
Yeah.
Okay. And because you don't want to leave, I'm gonna make it so you see you have to leave. And so I believe that, and I don't question that. Like right now, I'm at the point where I've come to I'm going to do what I want to do. I want to help. I want to help young administrators old, I don't care what it is, try to navigate, try to get to that next opportunity. That's why I joined with Brentwood Partners, because it was one of those organizations where it's not steadfast. You're only going to do this and this. You're going to be rigid. It's going to be whatever is opportunities to improve and help college athletics, those who work in college athletics, in my particular case, those who are minorities, who have been left out, forgotten in some cases, not given the right opportunity, not knowing what the right things to say or do. And at this point, being able to speak up for themselves and to say, I matter. I count. I am as experienced as anyone else. I can get the job done. I can create relationships, because I've been creating relationships all my life because I had to do it. I had to go into places where people, wouldn't necessarily go, because I was the only one in the room. I was the only one in the organization. So I had to make myself likable, if you want to call it that. So that's what I'm doing. And, for those who, want to obviously talk, and, first 30 minutes are free. No, anyway.
Well, we better go ahead and make sure we move on, because we want to be able to have that opportunity to field some questions. I tell you what, you may not be at an NCAA institution, but you are still giving back to our community, and we greatly appreciate that. Renee, let's go ahead and take about 2 or 3 questions for Keith, and then Keith, we'll go ahead and end with our rapid fire. Okay. Renee? Is Renee around? Oh.
Yeah. So I have it. The first question that we had in the chat is from Marquetta Dickens, and it says, in terms of fundraising, can you share some advice on closing?
Well, it really depends on, for me, it was depend on the amount, because I was always involved in both at UCF and at CEO of the foundation. I was always involved in 6-7 figure gifts. And usually those in my role were already teed up to the extent that the person was ready to give. But in most cases, they wanted to have a golf outing or dinner or lunch with me and really connect with me. And as I said, I mean, at the end of the day, you'll find that, I might not be perfect in a lot of things, but I am perfect in relationships and understanding people and making people feel good. And part of that is what we all aspire to. But for people who are getting ready to write you a check, if you create that relationship and you're able to make them feel good about what they're doing and they feel good about you, the cause is third. The cause is, because at that point for me, it was already, they liked the cause, but they wanted to make sure they liked me. They wanted to make sure they heard me and that I was in front of them. So I was really from a different point at that time. I know when I was in sales, I used the same technique. And one of these days, I will tell you a story of my sales when I had a territory in Athens, Georgia in 1980. So you can imagine sales territory in the Athens, North Georgia area that I encountered a lot. This black young man walking into a lumber yard and asking for an order. And I got a couple of names, but then I said, now, how am I going to sell this guy? I told him, I said, well, you're a Georgia Bulldog, I'm a Gator, and we're going to kick your A this year. Oh, he thought that was so funny. And he said, son, you can have 2 trucks. And that was the way I got an order. So, you have to use, I use whatever I can to try to get someone to feel comfortable. And because sometimes, 9 times out of 10, they either need it or they really like it before you get to that point.
Great. Michael, are there any other questions out there?
Yes, this question is from Megan Knobloch. Where are some resources or websites you can go to in order to compare the salary benefits you were offered to others in your same position in conference and region?
Salary benefits?
Well, it's the comparison of
Okay.
salaries. Yeah.
I think when I was in the business, when I was there, I used, I forgot the group that had ADs and coaches. They had
Wind AD.
Yeah, I use WinAD. I don't know what's being used now, but I'm sure there's something that you can compare. Unless you're an AD, I think you get in this chance, you talk to each other and you try to compare maybe, but I'm not aware. Maybe China or someone else.
Well, yeah, I will jump in on that answer, Keith. Yeah, Wind AD is one of them, and I know that when I was not working in FBS, I had friends around the country who had access to Wind AD, and I made a call to them and asked them to look up some salaries for me. The second thing is, I know when I was in Division II, conference offices would typically put a survey out around the conference to get that particular information on salaries. So if your conference doesn't do that, maybe that's something that you can potentially pitch to your conference commissioner. I know, I see Jackie McWilliams put a message up there. The CIAA does that, so that's great. So I would definitely encourage that. We're getting close, and thank you, Michael, for a couple of those questions. We're getting close to the end. We have about 5 minutes, and Keith, this is our time where we do a little bit of rapid fire. Rapid fire is the opportunity to ask Keith a number of quick questions. He doesn't really elaborate it on too much of it. He just kind of answers it, and we keep going. So Keith, let's go ahead and talk about your prediction for Major League Baseball. What's the start date prediction?
I hope they play. They got to solve the issue with I guess the players. If they can solve that, I guess they'll play. But I'm not a big Major League Baseball fan, so
you can take it or leave it, right?
Yeah.
All right. So will LaMelo Ball get the #1 draft pick in the NBA?
I hope not. No. I don't know. That's not. I'll pass on that one.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and talk about this. We'll get into your comfort zone. The prediction on the start of NFL football.
Okay. They'll play.
On time?
Oh, they'll play.
On time.
On time, and they probably are. They can not have anybody in the stands. It doesn't matter to them. They want them, but they'll play. On time.
Sounds good.
On time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Will the XFL return?
I don't think so. The guy who had it was very innovative. So, and he doesn't want to do it. There are not many people out there that are going to be innovative to do some different things, and that's an expensive venture. So, I don't think they will. I think no.
Okay. Will Tom Brady win the Super Bowl?
Not at Tampa. Not at Tampa. Well, is that meaning he's going to play 5 more years or whatever? Because he won't win immediately. I don't know how long he's going to play.
I was going to ask, what's your prediction of the number of years?
I don't even know why he's playing now, but anyway, there you go, I guess.
And golf isn't his game either, so.
Yeah, I know. He might play 2 or 3 years. 2
or 3 years. Which ESPN documentary should be made next?
Oh! There probably needs to be a real in-depth story on the Black athlete from a different perspective. you know, as I said, I think there's a window here that we have that we need to exploit and really bring out some stuff that's never been discussed. And I hope that happens.
Okay. Will Tiger Woods win another Masters?
I hope so. I'm a big Tiger Woods fan. I think he will. I think he will. I think he'll win another Masters.
Okay. Now, I asked you this in our planning meeting, but, you know, with what's happening around the country, I'm going to rephrase a little bit of the question. Should the NFL apologize to Colin Kaepernick?
Yes. Yes, I think so, because that's what I was talking about earlier. If you don't understand, then you look at it something from your purview and you're sticking to it. And if that continues to happen when we have to talk to folks who are not in the minority, who are the majority, who are so to speak, we won't get anything done. Everyone understood what those people were saying about being against, you know, the flag, standing for the flag. But it was never about the flag. And I think we can't get sidetracked, just like we cannot let people who riot and loot take away from the topic, because it's easy to go off topic when you don't want to talk about a topic. And we have to make sure that ourselves, when we have these conversations, that we keep people back focused on, oh, no, I won't talk about that. Let's talk about issues. Because I think too long we've allowed people to go ahead and talk about that, just go and interpret it in the narrative for us. And then we just give up. We just say, they don't want to understand. So now is not the time to give up on it. Now is to make them understand what it is. And what, you know, I had friends not call me for the first time and say, are you all right? And normally I would say, oh, I'm okay, everything. I said, no, I'm not. Oh, gosh, you're talking about that? Shocked them. So now we got to talk about this, because I'm not. I'm mad, I'm hurt, and when is this going to stop? Then that really evolved into a 2.5-hour conversation with this young man. And he said, you know, I really didn't understand it the way you're saying it. And, you know, sometimes that happens. So I know it's not going to happen, but yeah, they should.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. You took that rapid fire response to a whole nother level, and I'm sure we can create another session for that. Keith, it was such a pleasure speaking to you today. I've learned so much, and I hope everyone else has too. We wish you the best as you continue blazing a trail in the sports industry. Thank you very much, and we'll definitely continue to keep you engaged in our Moaa family.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we are now going to get ready for our next session. It's going to begin shortly. Thank you, everyone.